lot of good work. I think we're the only publishing group that does this. Okay, we are live. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Bhaskar from the Free Press Journal. And with me, I have perhaps one of the most impressive panelists that one could have in the city. We have Dr. Jurgen Morhard, the Consul General of Germany, who has fallen so much in love with India that he opted to tell his government that please extend my term. I'd like to spend one more term in India. And I'm glad he spent this additional term in India because he could participate in this webinar. And of course, we have with us other panelists, we have Avinash Bagdi, who is the head of finance for Covestro. And for those who are unfamiliar with Covestro, Covestro used to be part of Bayer. It spun away from Bayer as a separate company some years ago because it focused on polymers. And they are the whiz kids of polymers. Anything to do with polymers, which kind of plastic for your car, for your fridges, for whatever. If you want a new material designed, go to Covestro. They tell you what to do and how to do it. And they are one of the giants in the world when it comes to polymers. Then, of course, we have the backbone of the German engineering industry, Rajesh Nath, who is the managing director of VDMA, the Engineering Association in India. It's the Indian chapter of the Global Association for Engineers. Am I right?
For the German machinery manufacturer.
Machinery, okay. And he has all the numbers on German engineering and German machinery, which he'll share with you. And last of all, we have Rahul Oza, who is a consultant, who is a whiz kid when it comes to German laws, taxation, and what have you. And so we thought we should get Rahul here to have the final word and to tell us where our views need to be modified, where the laws is something quite different from public perception, what could be done in the field of investments. So we've got a pretty vast spectrum covered in the four panelists. Could I begin with inviting Dr. Morhard to tell us what he thinks about India-Germany relations and the investments into India. Dr. Morhard, your floor.
Bhaskar, thank you very much. I'm very happy and feel privileged to be on this forum of the Free Press Journal. I'm also want to acknowledge your partners, NMIMS, also a university I used to go and also love to be and visit and partner up. Of course, Invest in India is also one of our partners for bringing investments here and taking good care of our companies. Then, of course, there is also, as you mentioned, you have very eminent co-panelists here. Covestro, I like that you use the name polymers because plastic has a very negative connotation. And nobody understands nowadays that basic polymers or plastic is a background of everything, right? So you just have to look around. Despite the term plastic is not really something, you know, which sometimes is considered by certain groups as politically correct. So I think polymer is something we should give a boost and also make to understand the importance of these industries, and you try to highlight it out. Rahul, he can tell you things I don't want to touch because he can tell you what's working or not working. And VDMA is one of our largest associations also represented here. And he's very knowledgeable economic development expectation of our company. So I would like rather to focus and start with a general view, you know, on the cooperation between Europe and Asia as we see today. We had trade conflicts, climate change, we had future technologies, new energies, digitalization, and the crisis of multilateralism. These are just some points, you know, the world faced all those dramatically changes in this economic environment even before COVID-19 pandemic hit. Now COVID is overshadowing all those global challenges all of a sudden. It has forced us, I mean everybody, to reassess what constitutes for the future business as usual going forward. You mentioned it, it might be foreign investment, creating jobs again. But there are many other aspects. We have to ask ourselves, will international travel come back? Will the global value chains see it be something remembered of the past, or we continue to build up new models around the world? Will the world after COVID be the beginning of something better or worse, economically, socially, politically? And what we have learned? I think the most immediate thing we have learned is that we still need international cooperation and collaboration even more than ever. Even if you just look at the COVID crisis itself, no country can fight a pandemic and isolate it in a pandemic which has global scale. And then, of course, the past has seen international cooperation, economic integration, which brought a lot of good and wealth to the world and the globe. In particular, the economic integration between the US and China has set up the pace of globalization. That's something we have to recognize. But in the past years, it was just those two nations, basically, who brought this to a standstill with their own bilateral conflict. What we call now, we're discussing as this coupling of the world, had, of course, profound implications also for India, the other Asian nations, and the European Union. We have to see now how can Asia, Indo-Pacific area, and also Europe position themselves in this conflict in the new emerging world. There is no doubt that Asia will continue to be the economic powerhouse, and in those difficult times, we have to reassess. We have been making up our minds discussing this in Germany, and also our Chancellor, Mrs. Merkel, just made a press statement where she was really referring again to the importance of the Asia-Pacific, Indo-Pacific region. And she was referring that despite already excellent business relations we enjoy between Europe, Germany, and Asia, there are still a lot of new opportunities which can be tapped in. She was looking for that. No, we have her policies, the German government, and as we are the head of the European Union as presidency at the moment, is that we have really to intensify our dialogue with the Asian partners in order to improve the framework for economic relations. We have to look for equal treatment, for transparency, legal certainty, and the protection of IBR in order to move forward and to integrate each other. Germany itself, as well as the European Union, have a so-called strategic partnership. And during the last consultations we had in November 2019, 21 new agreements were signed between Germany and India. But we're looking back to a long history of German presence in India. And I think you also put it out on your website as a free press journal. I could read that we are the 7th largest investor between 2020 and 2012, the 6th largest trading partner and the most important trading partner of India in the EU. But I think that Mr. Nath will give also a different perspective from his industry, a more detailed one. So we have to see what is saying that for us, Germany, you might have a different look, but Germany, is a small country. It's a small country when it comes to population, but we are certainly one of the countries, and I think it goes for all European countries. They are internationally connected as really difficult to describe, right? There is no European country which could live on its own and thrive and create welfare. And across many sectors, German companies are heavily dependent so far on this global supply chains and production chains. As we said, there is now these new areas are coming in, and we have to see now what might be the future. Coming back now, what is the policy of Germany? Germany, just on having the helm, being at the helm of the European Union, developed its own Indo-Pacific policy guidelines, which go way beyond the political aspects, because the political aspect, just let me face what is important. Why is the Indo-Pacific area in particular, India, important partner? First of all, India, like many other countries, is one of our partners and advocate of a rule-based world. Right, that is very important to just the rule-based world. There's one of the few countries that we have a rule-based world. India as well, the others understand that all their issues from cybercrime, climate change, pollution, many of those aspects where you have global, the pandemic, of course, needs to be done with a number of states, and that we rather have to reform what has been done or is not working properly, starting from the WTO and other international bodies, than rather giving up. Because we can only be international and thrive internationally and deal with each other if there are international rules, and we stick to those rules. Therefore, India has been considered also on the political field a very important partner for Germany for the time being. Not for the time being, but for a long time. So Germany and India are connected with these political values, and of course also by civil societies. I don't want to go back and go what is history, literature, language, and all these things. You know, there I could give a lecture. I could give a lecture myself on the entanglement between the two countries in histories, and then people have published books on this. But I just want to give some figures now on the economic side, and I think sure Mr. Nath will also focus and give more details. When we look today, we have more than 1,800 German companies present here. We have creating more than 300,000 jobs at the moment in India. We have, as you said, I mentioned already that we are the 7th largest investor. We're one of the major donors after Japan for development aid with 1 billion a year, which might be not so visible, but it's really it's there because what the German concept is to work inside the Indian institutions, right? You hardly go around and you find a big project anymore, a dam, and saying this has been sponsored or done by Germany. No, but we are working and try to reform and help the government where they need themselves in order to upgrade the institutions. And there in many areas we are helping to draw legislation and concepts and blueprints from environmental laws up to skilling concepts, which is another area. So we have seen, since I'm here, I have seen a constant inflow of investments. It's very difficult to qualify and quantify it. But in the year 2019, I have been every second week, I was only in my jurisdiction, Gujarat and Madhya Pradesh, and of course in Maharashtra. Every second week, statistically, I was of the opening of a new German investment. I found this quite remarkable. This has indeed also continued in 2020. And this is happening virtually because this investment has been done before. And now recently I was now here, I was calling up a lot of German companies, try to reassess and said, how are you doing? What are you doing? And they said, oh, look, this is our plan. We acquired a new plot of land. And this is our new strategic plan. Can you help us with the government? And it shows only to me that despite what has been going on and despite the economic slump and might be the immediate outlook, German companies who are already here have a long-term commitment to India, are convinced of India, that India might rebound, and are not here, as I normally would say, the German companies are not here for a short-term quarterly result. They are here not for a sprint, but normally for a marathon, right? And have a long-term decade perspective. And this was to my surprise, is even going on now at the moment. And I'm here now in contact with companies in order to help. There are some small issues. We can talk about this later. So India is going to stay, because India is going to stay not because of itself, but also, as I mentioned, of this new Indo-Pacific outline and project policy guidelines, because we have to see, we have ourselves to decouple from China in a way and US, because there the goalposts for free trade are always changing overnight. We have to look in building up new investments chains. And there, of course, India is as naturally as also other some smaller partners in India is one of the major partners, because German industry is already well established here. As you know, was to mention it, German industries is not a problem to find qualified staff. Pune has the highest number of German-speaking people outside Europe. Somewhere. So it's very good. They have an open door policy. India investment in India might not be not easy. It's difficult, but it's all over difficult. And as I understand from our companies, the opportunities are far outweighing any risks and difficulties we are facing. Now let's have a look also the other way around. What means Europe today for India? India is facing the same problem. Uncertain partners with China, uncertainties when it comes to the trade policy of US. And all of a sudden, this old Europe, India turned around, India business turned around and found out, oh, there's another large single market of 450 million people even after Brexit, larger than US. And it's a simple market where the governments are not signaling and don't intend to close up. No, they're still open for trade. They are the ones, this is the only single market, the biggest, largest market open to at nowadays, who is open for business and promises to do so on the same level playing field and values as India is looking into it. So we could find out at our consulate in a very easy way. There was all of a sudden a rush by Indian businessmen to Europe. All wanted to go to trade shows as exhibitors, as visitors. We could see from their visas, they have never been to the Schengen area before. And we have seen also over the years a constant flow of investment even before to Europe and in India. And of course, now the Brexit also will have a new twist of it to the European EU states. So my impression is also there is a mutual benefit now from both sides. It's when we talk about what can we do each other from the political partnership, economical partnership, investment partnership also on both sides. And we see, that we are both are embarking on a path. I think Mr. Nath should make some comment on it, which is called Industry 4.0. That is a way forward digitization also of the European interrelationship. And of course, although there, India is a very important partner and an opportunity, right, for both of us. So I would just leave it here for the moment because we have the experts. I could go on more details. And as said, I just want to remember what I said in the past. So that despite many challenges we are facing here, despite many problems we might face, I have been serving so many countries. It's nowhere easy when you go abroad, right? It's nowhere easy. It's always a foreign turf. But I'm convinced, and German businesses, to my understanding, are convinced that the challenges are outweighed way by the opportunities India is offering to them. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I like the line that the challenges are outweighed by the opportunities. Thank you. Could I request Avinash Bagdi to make his opening remarks?
Thanks, Mr. Bhaskar. And it is really my pleasure to be here, being a part of such an eminent panelist. And thanks to Free Press Journal for giving this opportunity to talk about India and Germany. And I think Dr. Morhard had more or less covered a vast, topics, and there is hardly anything left to talk about. But I will still like to stress a few more points, which I think will further to what Dr. Morhard has talked about. So one of the important aspects that he talked about is that the German companies in India are for marathon; they are not for sprint. And even if you look at history, the relationship between India and Germany is almost 500 years old, and like he mentioned, we share the same cultural value. We talk about civil society. We talk about rule-based business. In addition to that, what I am seeing more nowadays is there is also a focus on the environmental part. And being a polymer company, I'm quite sure this is a topic very important and very close to our heart. And Germany, and especially Europe, is driving it in a very big way. And if you look at the history, there are a lot of German companies that are present in India and established since century ago. And Covestro, being an offshoot of Bayer started business in India in 1896. So we are talking about a history of 125 years. So that talks a lot about the relationship between India and Germany. Dr. Morhard also touched upon trade relationship, and he rightly mentioned that if you look at last few years, we are seeing a kind of a trend coming up where we are talking about economic nationalism or protectionist trade policy. Definitely that is having an impact on the overall supply chain, and that was a pre-COVID. Now COVID has accelerated those things, which is forcing company more and more to really review their overall supply chain, find out what all are the vulnerabilities and how you are going to address the same. And that's where this concept started of a +1 jurisdiction, right? And that's where India is seeing as an opportunity in the crisis. Whether in addition to China, can India will be this +1 jurisdiction? And to be very frank, India is not the only economy. We have competition there as well. So if we look at competition, if we look at Southeast Asian economy, whether we talk about Vietnam, Philippines, Taiwan, Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, they are also doing very good in that sense in terms of attracting the investment. And that's very important, that how India is playing. Yes, we are talking about ease of doing business. India has jumped significantly over last 5-10 years. If we look at the ranking from 139, now we are talking about in 2019, a ranking of 63. But still there is a lot to do. And if we really want to bring more investment in India, we need to be in the top of the league. And that's the most important aspect that we need to look into. Now, whenever a company is bringing an investment in India, there are few aspects that they look into. And first, we are talking about the overall market potential. No doubt, India has a very, very strong market potential. Whether we talk about the per capita consumption, it's very, very less. Whether we talk about the number of people, it's very, very high. Whether we talk about, the young population, yes. Whether we talk about urbanization, yes. Whether we talk about, aspiring middle class people who are increasing, all those factors are there. But one of the important aspects that government has also mentioned when they talked about vocal for local or make in India or Atmanirbhar Bharat, it's not just about the local economy. India, if they want to be a manufacturing powerhouse and alternate to China, they also need to look from an export perspective. And how prepared are we from an export perspective is very, very important criteria. And that brings back to a lot of aspect when we look at ease of doing business. And the most important aspect is the infrastructure. And that's an area where India need to put more stress upon the kind of infrastructure that we need to create to really bring those kind of investment in India. One thing we also need to understand is that, yes, India has a high potential, but still we are not growing as per our potential. We talked in 2004, Shining India. Now we are into 2020, and we are also more or less talking in the same line. The only difference which we are finding attractive for India, first is the political stability. That's the most important part, which was not there from 2014 to, you can say, 2013, where we have Khichdi Sarkar or coalition government. The second important thing that we are seeing is a digital part, where India can play a big role. And that is an area which the MNCs are looking forward for. Skilled workforce, definitely one of the important area, and government is also working on skilling India. What is going to drive FDI in future is the capacity expansion. So that means German companies who are already there are gradually looking up to step up their position in India. And Covestro is one of the example. If you really look history of Covestro last 20-25 years, every 4 or 5 years we are doing a step up investment to cater to the demand locally. But if we need to play a game bigger than that to make it a hub for manufacturing, we need to look more from an export perspective. R&D is important thing. We are seeing a trend last few years. There are a lot of companies who are developing or bringing in the R&D base in India. And this is very, very important because we don't want India to be a manufacturing base only for low end, production. We want a value added production. And R&D is something that's going to play a very, very significant role. Faster clearances from the government, a law implementation. So we are seeing very recently government has done a lot of reform, policy reform. Whether we talk about the FDI reform, there are a lot of things which has been allowed also in the automatic route. So you don't need to go through the approval route. There are recent law changes in the case of taxes. There are labor reform that's going on. The most important part is that how we implement it going forward is going to play a very, very crucial role in terms of attracting the investment. Now, very recently, government is also coming up with production linked incentive, and we are seeing a traction. As soon as government has announced this PLI, especially in the electronic segment and mobile segment, we have seen so many companies are showing interest, including Apple, right? Now, government is also taking that as a example. Government is also trying to frame the similar kind of production linked incentive in chemical segment. They are looking into automotive segment. They are looking into pharmaceutical segment. And if we implement this at a faster pace, I'm quite sure that India can come up as a plus one jurisdiction for a lot of companies. So these are the important factors that we need to look into, that we need to work and see that how it's going to really bring a benefit in terms of the government's vision of making India and making India a manufacturing hub.
Thank you very much, Avinash Bagdi. That was very good. And thank you for bringing up issues about moving from domestic manufacturing to exports, because that's something which is going to be crucial for India. I would now like to invite Rajesh Nath, who has his numbers on his fingertips. Okay, I think he has a presentation. So let me get his presentation up. One second.
Thank you, Bhaskar, and good afternoon to all our viewers, and also honor for me to share the dais with our Consul General, Dr. Morhard, my friend Rahul, and also Avinash. I think the speakers before have spoken quite extensively on several topics. Dr. Morhard mentioned about collaboration and cooperation, the economic integration, which is so very important. He spoke about that, and certainly the German companies investing in India are looking at a very long-term perspective. And I think this is really very important for the German companies, because they are not looking at a short gain or a short-term engagement in India, but at a long-term perspective. I think Avinash also touched upon some very valid points. Requirement of India, infrastructure in India, ease of doing business, value-added production. We are seeing many companies coming into becoming the center of excellence here in India to produce for the global industry.
You cannot see it.
Yeah.
One second. I think there's a problem with they could not see the presentation. 1 second.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. That's right. So friends, I just wanted, Kevin, if we could have the full...
Can you see it now?
Yes, thank you. Yes, I can see it now.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So friends, I basically wanted to touch upon certain data and statistics on the bilateral trade among the two countries, and also on the engineering aspect. What is the Indo-German trade in the engineering sector? Yes. So friends, if we look at this, the investment, FDIs coming from Germany to India in the last, if we look at 19 to 20 years, it's been approximately 10.5 billion euros. And here over the last few years, we can see, for example, 2018 was a very good year. We had almost 930 million euros of investment coming from Germany to India. 2019, you can see the dip, but that can also be attributed as we saw a slowdown of the Indian economy. Whereas in 2018, we were growing at almost about 7 to 8%. In 2019, our GDP growth has dropped to about 5 to 6%. So this slowdown could also be attributed to that. But what is important rather than the individual figures is really that the German companies are looking at India as a long-term partner, and their willingness to invest in India, to have a base in India. I can share my own experience, Bhaskar, when I started working for VDMA 20 years ago. We had mainly the companies who were looking at service and sales offices. Now we have the companies who are coming to India, looking to invest in India, looking at manufacturing facility in India. Could we go to the next slide, please? Yes.
Yes, please.
And friends, when we talk about this FDI, if we go to the next slide, we can see that which are the sectors this foreign direct investment has come. So the majority of the largest chunk has certainly come from the automobile industry. And it's no wonder, with Germany having been the technological edge, we have so many well-known German brands operating in India. So the automobile sector is the largest chunk, followed by the services sector. Then we have also the drugs and pharmaceutical, electrical equipment, and certain trading that is happening. Then coming to the bilateral trade, friends. The bilateral trade between, yes, we can go to the next slide, please. The bilateral trade among the two countries is approximately 21 or 21.5 billion euros, friends. A good figure, but certainly it could be developed. And when we look at the exports from Germany, certainly Germany has the exports from Germany are to the tune of about 12.5 billion euros. And from India to Germany, there is about roughly, you could say, 9 billion euros is the trade coming from India to Germany. So you could say that Germany has certainly the advantage of trade when we talk about Indo-German bilateral trade. What is important, friends, that the machinery sector, now machinery sector plays an important role in this bilateral trade, and almost 1/3 is covered from the machinery sector. If we go to the next slide, please, then I can talk a little more in depth about the machinery sector. So first we'll see which are the top segments, friends, of the German exports in the bilateral trade from Germany to India. So we have the textile sector, the chemical sector coming in. So these have been the important aircrafts, the metals and metal products. So these have been the important components of the German exports to India in the part of 2019. So these would constitute the 5 top segments. When we go to the next slide, please. Here we are talking from imports from India to Germany. So again, we have textile, chemical sector, machinery sector, food, and leather. Yes, leather is an important aspect when we talk about the exports from India to Germany. Going to the next slide, please. So friends, in the next slide, we can see the development of the German engineering exports to India over the period of time. So if we look at, friends, if we look at a figure, say around the period 99-2000, it was as low as about 600 million euros of German engineering exports to India. Now, this certainly has been increasing and peaked in 2011-12, where it touched 3,600 million. And in 2019, it is to the tune of about 3,100 million. But if you see from this period in the last 20 years, there has been almost a 6 to 7-fold increase of German engineering exports to India. And if we go to the next slide, we can see also that I think this is an important aspect that Dr. Morhard as well as Avinash mentioned, that it is not only trade in one direction, but we have also a good development of engineering exports from India to Germany. And I think this is where it offers the local industry, the local entrepreneurs, also good potential for doing business with Germany. And this, as you see, friends, in this slide or in this graph, you can see how this has been increasing over the years. And whereas exports from Germany to India saw a dip in 2019, the engineering exports from India to Germany saw in fact an increase of about 3%. Though it is at a lower level, but I think it speaks volumes of a good development, a healthy development of the bilateral trade among the two countries. And if we go to the next slide, friends, then we can see which are the top industrial segments of German exports to India. And Bhaskar, I think this would be of interest to our viewers also to see where is Germany exporting in which segments. So the power transmission, mechanical power transmission, here we are talking of couplings, gears, bearings. So this constitutes about 12%, followed by the plastic and rubber machinery, plastic processing machinery. We were talking earlier about plastic being an important industry, plastic recycling. So German manufacturers here have been very quite aggressive in the Indian market, have well established themselves in the Indian market. Another segment where Germany always traditionally has been strong in India is the machine tools sector, with automobile sector being one of the largest customer base for the machine tools sector. Another sector is the valve sector, which has actually picked up in the last 2 or 3 years, friend. And here we are talking of industrial valves as well as building valves. When we talk about building valve, is what you see behind the wall actually, and of course the industrial valve. Another sector that has come up very well in the last 2 or 3 years is the air handling technology. So here we are talking about refrigeration, cooling. When we are talking about cold chains, the cold logistic chain, Bhaskar, as we know, India has a lot of food wastage. We in fact, here is a good potential, again, a good opportunity for the German companies to supply to the Indian market. And textile machinery. India has a very strong hub of textile, of garment production, and this is where the German manufacturers also have well established themselves quite well in the textile machinery segment. Next slide, please. So friends, I would like to keep it brief, but just let me touch upon one or two points first, what Dr. Morhard rightly mentioned, which are the industry segments where I think there is a good possibility of collaboration between Germany and India, friends. Industry 4.0. Now, certainly, I think when we are talking about digitalization, what is Industry 4.0? Industry 4.0, we are trying to bring the physical cyber world together. So how machines would communicate with each other, and the importance especially for the MSME sector. India has a large base of MSMEs. Bhaskar, we have something like 63.4 million MSMEs in India, which employ 120 million people. So unless the MSME sector grows in India, we can't really see the industrial growth in India because they form the backbone of the Indian industry. And I think Industry 4.0 certainly has a very important application for the MSME sector, because when you get real-time data, you can do remote monitoring, you can prevent breakdown of machines. When you implement certain baby steps in automation, this can really help and benefit the MSME sector. Then another important segment is circular economy. Avinash briefly mentioned about recycling. I think circular economy, especially when resources are going to be crunched in the future, we don't have unlimited resources. So how, using circular economy, how we can best utilize the resources. And I think plastic industry is a very good example where really circular economy can come into play. So the German companies in India are well established. As VDMA, we have 38 industrial verticals. And VDMA is the largest industrial association, not only in Germany, in whole of Europe, friends, and representing 3,300 or 3,300 German companies and having a turnover of about 232 billion. We are a 127-year-old association, an old history, what we have. So as VDMA, we are looking forward to engagement of the German companies in India, as well as looking and supporting the Indian industry and getting them in contact with the German industry. So typically, we see our role as a bridgehead between the German industry and the Indian industry. And I'm sure as we go ahead to my next slide, please. As we go ahead, friends, I think that's fine, Bhaskar. That was the last slide. So
yes, I thought so.
On that. So I'm very hopeful. I wish all the Indian entrepreneurs also all the very best. It's a difficult year, difficult times we are facing, but these are the times, as Consul General mentioned, to look for collaborations, to look how we can work together. And working together, as VDMA, we have our motto is humans, machines, and progress. So Bhaskar, we strongly believe humans and machines working closely together can lead to the progress of the society, progress of the nation. And that is what we strive forward as VDMA. And we look forward to supporting the German and the Indian industry. And before I end, I wish all our viewers the very best for the festive season. We are stepping into the festive season. So wishing everyone, please stay safe and follow the norms also of safety. Because we cannot be, I think, in this period of festive season, we have to follow the guidelines. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the perspective and festive greetings to you also. Okay, now can I have the last panel today? And this is Rahul Oza, the man who has all the answers to all the questions we could not ask. Rahul, could you?
Yeah, thank you, Bhaskar. This is a very challenging introduction which you gave to me about me. Now, in the first introduction, you said that Rahul will highlight what are the major differences between the Indian and the German regulatory aspects. I hope all the viewers have taken at least 2 2 to 5 hours time, because that much it will take. And thank you very much for listening now for the next 2 hours to me. No, there is actually not much of a difference. I think Mr. Morhard rightly said one thing, it is rule-based. The Indian system is rule-based. And as I know that both systems, the German system as well as the Indian system, I would like to highlight one thing. Laws can be, and regulations can be, in any country, nonsense, and they can in any country be good. This is not anything where any country can ever claim a monopoly on having only good laws. I don't know any country who has perfect laws. I majored in European law. This is the biggest horrible legal system sometimes. If you want to see an overregulated system. I think what makes it complicated in India is that the Indian natural approach is a little bit hide and seek. And this hide and seek comes into a system where we used to live in a country where we differentiated between applied laws and applicable laws. Now what nonsense is that, ladies and gentlemen? We need all applicable laws to be applied. And this is currently what is happening. And this is something which is pinching the Indian economy a little bit, where suddenly the government is asking you to follow the rules which have been applicable all this while. Yeah? And that is a natural gesture and demand of any civilized politics. Let me emphasize on, we always talk about simplification of laws. This is not possible. I have not seen any jurisdiction on this world which majored, except abolishing laws, to simplify laws. It is not in the nature of any government. It is not in the nature of us human beings, because any law has to be applied to so many cases which cannot be simplified in one paragraph until unless being complicated. So let me please take out of this myth that India is complicated. Yes, I do advise predominantly only German companies in India. Yes, India is complicated, but as Mr. Morhard said as well, anywhere else is as well complicated. So the world is complicated. We human beings are complicated, and therefore we need complicated rules. What can India do but to limit the hide and seek approach of India is to unify laws, which India has done. The GST regime, which has been introduced. What a simplification. If you go into it, it is obviously, and all my panelists colleagues will appreciate that, it is de facto obviously not easier, but you know which law is applicable. You have a good standard now where you can approach, where you have a remedy if you are of a different opinion. These are things which India needs to improve. We don't need to have an abolishment of tax laws. By the way, Avinash mentioned it rightly. See the tax cuts which India has done. For newly incorporated manufacturing companies after October 2019, the tax rate is now 17% with all surcharges, plus forfeit of dividend distribution. Now, dear Mr. Trump, in case anyone is listening from that angle, that is called a tax cut. This is really a tax cut. And we have to appreciate this. Now, what the perception about India is, unfortunately, in the German media, not that great. Mr. Morhard will, and Mr. Nath, who know as well German, obviously Dr. Morhard knows it. The perception of India and Indian economy is in the German media very bad. Yeah. Why? Because we are ourselves not convinced at many times. How do you want to invite guests, yeah, if you don't feel that your apartment is good? You will never do that. So we have to be first convinced that India is a good destination, and India is a good destination. The FDI rules have significantly changed. Things like overnight, suddenly that besides overnight in India happens nowadays a lot, demonetization happened overnight, but as well the liberalization of the ECB rules. What a major step, nobody is talking about it. Earlier, if a company wanted to set up a manufacturing plant, the purchase of the land was share capital invested. Heavily disgusting for any foreign investor. We have now an NCLT, National Company Law Tribunal. It is important for an investor, if he invests, that he knows how can he de-invest again. This has been so much simplified. Yeah. 7 years ago, if somebody would have told me I want to wind up my company in India, I would have started laughing. Now it is an option. Now you can restructure. India is coming to a good economical standard, and I'm very much convinced that India has to be strict in the compliance. Because the Indian national spirit is not to try to find and spend more time in ways to not to comply than instead of bloody comply. So this is an important change in the Indian economy, which everyone is going through, and that's the reason why Indian itself thinks, oh, it's very tough, our economy is down, the government is overruling us. No, the government is trying to make a policy, a country where people follow the rules. And that is the most important factor for foreign investment, to invite foreign investment. Rule-based, live the rule-based. I think I'll stop now here because
okay. Thank you, Rahul. You effectively silenced me in my criticism of some of the government laws. Thank you very much. Okay, but there are, before I go to the other panelists, there are two issues that worry me. One is because of the non-predictability and because of the extension of cases in the courts, fighting against anything, the government is willing to accept your point of view. But because of certain bureaucratic rules and because of fear, it gets elongated and elongated till people get upset. You need to find a way to cut short the disputes. That's one area which is worrying for me.
It is the area, if I step in here, this is the area of worrisome. Because, see, as I said, law can be good or bad, it depends. Yeah, but you need security, and you can get security only in an efficient jurisdictional system. This is something which India has to address. And I have mentioned the National Company Law Tribunal. For companies, it has been now very much put in place a system which is very efficient. On the other side, many of the text-driven appeals are all online and digitalized,
Which is good.
which makes it better. But this is only the beginning. We have to have a very, very significant reform. And I'm not criticizing the content of the judgments.
Yes.
The content of the judgments are equally good and equally bad as in anywhere.
Anyway, yes.
The duration is the problem. I cannot wait 10 years. Yeah. I need it in half a year, 1 year. But
I can live with a bad judgment, but I can't go on waiting forever.
As a lawyer, I wouldn't say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I ask a second question? This is to Dr. Morhard and everyone, actually. Dr. Morhard rightly said that the entire world needs the rule of law. You need a rule-based application of all laws. You need greater globalization. Now, this is where, unfortunately, the US, which used to promote globalization and the rule of law, has slipped far behind. The future world depends on IT, AI, and all other internet-based services and digital-based services and databases where the US and China lead. Now, both are being excluded. Where would the answers lie? Would Germany, which is a hub of business today in the world, be able to provide that answer? And this is open to everyone. Dr. Morhard?
Thank you very much. This was a very broad question, but of course we need rules, right? And when in particular comes to look, for example, to IT-related businesses, IT-related regulation, when it comes to data protection, you have two ends of a spectrum.
Yeah.
US and you have China.
Yes.
Right? You have something completely in, and there it might go unnoticed, but there is an initiative in the G20 countries, also Germany is very much involved, in order to define something in between.
Yes.
No, there's something in between. In the very end, we don't know, of course, if US or China will buy into those things, but nevertheless, even if those two partners on both ends for the time being, I said for the time being, might opt out of many of the existing regulations or trade systems or whatever what we have. Still, there is a need of the hour. There are so many, there are almost 200 other states of the world who have to move on.
Yes.
And that is something which is done and basically goes unnoticed because it's also a difficult process, a multilateral process. But this is coming and it's going on. Don't be worried. It might be long and it will never get a push as you would have the major player US behind. But this is a constant discussion. It's one of the policy lines. But unfortunately, everything now has been dropped and is in the shadow of COVID.
Yes. Because Europe's role in this business will be cool.
Yeah. No. This is one of the important topics on the agenda of G20.
Okay. Anyone else would like to comment on that?
Yeah, if I could just add to that, Bhaskar, I think where there is the potential now is we need to marry the German hardware with the Indian software. And I think that is where we really see the potential of a good collaboration, cooperation among the two countries. You mentioned talking about artificial intelligence, machine learning, Industry 4.0. He has a lot of technological knowledge and strength that can be combined with the Indian workforce of IT and IT structure, ITS services. I think that is where it is going to be a win-win situation. And if I may just add one more point here, Bhaskar, is China's strength lies in mass production. The factory of the world or factory of the future, you could talk about factory of the world. Now, India has never been a hub for mass production. Our economies of scale have been low. But I think the biggest opportunity now going to be for India is if we are able to move to automation and Industry 4.0, we are moving away from mass production to mass customization. And India has the ability to do the customization. And I think this is going to be the biggest opportunity that we will have in the coming period if we can adopt a certain level of automation and Industry 4.0, because mass customization will really give India the benefit here.
Okay. Two other questions before I take the questions from the audience. We may spill over by about 10 minutes because I want to get the audience in very crucially. One of the things that, one of the issues that I'm concerned about is the increasing exposure that companies have, and this is across the world. And as Rahul said, India's laws are as good or as bad as laws anywhere. But when countries have laws, or when countries begin rules which change rules of business, there is a potential for political risk insurance to emerge as a bigger business in the world than ever before. Germany has the largest reinsurance company, Munich Re. Do you think Europe and Germany in particular will be able to get into this area of political risk insurance?
Maybe Mr. Bhaskar, just few lines from my side.
Yes.
Because this is also one of the important contention of a bilateral treaty that is under discussion between India and European nation.
Which the government did not want, as BITs were cancelled in the past.
Yeah. So the major area of contention that's there is the same part, that the investment safety.
Investment safety, yes. Point.
Yeah, and that's the major area of contention. So if you look at this discussion that started somewhere in 2007, it went up to 2013, and then it suspended. And now very recently it's again started.
Yes.
And this is one of the major area of contention because there is certain clause which has been mentioned in this bilateral treaty which is not acceptable to either of the party.
I agree with you.
One thing which India said is that yes, we are okay for arbitration outside India only after you have exhausted
existing legal provisions in India.
Yeah, and that also comes to the same part of your first question, which you mentioned, is that why things go prolong. Because you are providing such a big avenue where you need to continuously fight, and then you go for an international arbitration, and Vodafone is a super example of it, right? And that is something I think which is still under discussion between the countries, between the bureaucrats, between the politicians. We don't have a ready-made answer, but this is something which I think India is also inclined to look into, because India has opted out of RCEP, considering the taking care of the interest of India. Now India is actively engaged with UK, US, and EU to ensure that we have some treaty with them so that we can increase the overall base and do manufacturing or become a base or hub for them. So as of now, I don't see that we have an answer to it, but yes, there are measures being taken in those directions.
Okay, good. So we are moving in that direction.
Yeah, we are moving in that direction. And that is one of the important aspects, that if you're inviting someone to do an investment in India, definitely
you have to protect his investment.
Some level of security or things to the companies.
Rahul, would you like to say anything?
No, I can just emphasize that it is very important. And it is not should do and should go in this direction. It has to go fast, because there are certain rules and playbook how you treat investors, and that has to be emphasized.
Okay.
But I think Mr. Morhard is there. That is one of his most dearest topics, actually. Investment protection.
Dr. Morhard, all yours.
No. Thank you very much. No, the most important thing which needs to come is of course a free trade agreement between Europe and India, and there's a changing perspective now also from the Indian side. I'm very sorry, I have to hop over in another webinar conference with the Chief Secretary of our state. So thank you very much for all of you. I think you can continue and go longer. You have the most eminent experts with Rahul and Mr. Nath and somebody from the industries. Thank you for having me here. If I finish the other call and you're still on, I will rejoin you. Stay healthy, stay safe.
And thank you very much for being with us.
Yeah.
It was wonderful having you. Okay. Two other questions that I have. Sorry, one more question that I have is Germany has been a leader in some areas. Amazing leader. Polymers is one. Once upon a time, it was very powerful in the power sector, in telecommunications, but those are slipped by. It used to be very powerful in database through SAP, but Oracle has still managed to keep SAP a little bit under pressure. It was very strong, and I've been an admirer of Germany, Hermann Scheer, when he brought in the rooftop solar concept and the FIT. And people in India don't realize what Hermann Scheer did for the solar industry across the world. But that aggressive push in all these areas from Germany's side has not been forthcoming. Why? Rajesh, would you like?
Very good question, Bhaskar. I won't say the aggressive push has not been forthcoming, Bhaskar. Actually, Germany has been quite active in India also.
It has been. I'm not saying it's not.
Yes, talking about renewable energy. But as we know, Bhaskar, actually, when we talk about the hardware, like we talk about solar energy, the solar panels are one of the key core component of the solar energy. Now, China is the base or the hub for solar panels. I think China is the largest producer of solar panels in the world. And in fact, the German companies also, who were earlier active in that field, have also lost their market share to the Chinese companies. But I think where Germany's strength lies, it's not only the solar panels, I think what is the system integrators.
The system integrators, the electronics that goes into it, yes.
Absolutely. That's still where Germany has the technology.
Exactly.
And we are very strong in that. So certainly wind energy, now we have some very good companies in India also who are active in the wind energy domain, also suppliers to the wind energy aspect, wind energy sector. And even if you look at biofuel or biomass, we have certain very good projects. In fact, Bhaskar, some exceptional projects that are coming up in Punjab also, trying to handle the pollution what we have, the problem what we have of pollution coming on in North India, in Delhi. We have one very prominent German project that being installed now for the using basically burning what is causing the pollution. And if this project is a success, I think this could be replicated across other states here also. Only I think, if I may be allowed to say this, Germany is we believe more in working rather than creating too much show and pomp about it. So
Okay.
grassroots level, a lot of good work is being done, which is perhaps not being highlighted. But I think Germany is well established when we talk about renewable energy, solar energy, or this biofuel energy basket.
Okay.
I agree with what Rajesh has said, because
Yes.
if you really look, Germany is really working very closely with India in all those directions.
Okay.
So when we talk about wind energy, if you see, Germany is working very closely and also offering not only the technology part, but in terms of financial support to India. And I'm talking in billions of dollars.
Yes.
Because India is historically and now also is hugely a coal-based energy.
Yes.
They really want India to work on the renewable-based energy.
Exactly.
And the Prime Minister has also set certain target for us for the renewable-based energy. From 175 gigawatt, we are talking about 250. Now we are setting a target of 450. So all these are also coming because there are supports in terms of technology, in terms of finance, coming from all across the globe. Another important concept that's right now working is the green bond. Okay, so that means you are getting a financing at a cheaper rate if you are into the renewable part.
Precisely.
And this concept is also developing. We see those concepts more in the Western world, especially in the Europe, but now this concept is also picking up in India. And these are the various avenues that's available, which can be utilized really to push the renewable part, which is very, very core and very, very important for India going forward.
Okay, great. Rahul, would you like to say anything?
Yeah, I can see a huge jump, at least in the last 2 years, 3 years. for renewable energies. There was a huge influx 2006, and all burned their fingers and retrieved from the Indian market. That again left a bad perception on the renewable energy market. But right now, the wind energy is going very strong, especially in South India. Yeah. And I must say, and I must appreciate, for example, the initiative of Tamil Nadu guidance, yeah, which is providing a service approach to the big windmill manufacturer and saying, give me the list of your suppliers, we'll get them here.
Wonderful.
So I think for the sustainability of renewable energy, we have to change a little bit our policies as well.
Yes.
More subvention driven. We have to give a guarantee of pricing till such things don't happen, because renewable energy started out of a very humble and nice and environmental approach, but it is a tough business.
And the changing of pricing by the government hurts investors very badly.
Absolutely, absolutely, and this is something which has to be addressed, and which is addressed from my perspective. And now people are coming, and I find it very remarkable that India, being an emerging country, says we want to set on green energy. This is very nice. China is not doing it. US is not doing it. Germany is saying that it is doing it.
Wonderful. Okay, I'll end my questions. I'll take Dipti, do you have the questions in the audience? We can take 2 or 3 because we've already overshot our time. And that's Dr. Morhard had to leave.
Yes, sure. So we have some questions from the audience here. So one of the questions is that some Indian companies are dependent on German companies for industrial equipment. Are there financing or funding options that Indian companies can opt for while procuring this equipment from Germany?
Dipti, this has to be taken on a case-to-case basis. It's very difficult to say offhand. But yes, certain companies offer, or they are working together with certain finance institutions. So this would have to be taken on a case-to-case basis. Dipti.
Okay.
Actually, Rajesh and I did a webinar on 52 Shades of Trade. And that was one topic, the finance system of the German government and the Euler Hermes.
Right.
So, Dipti, yes, there's a system where German exports or imports from Germany can be financed via Germany.
Dipti, can we take the next question?
Yes. So the other question is, what are your views on ease of doing business in India, and over the years, has it really improved for German companies?
Rahul and actually all of those 3, yes.
Avinash, would you like to start?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, definitely we do see a lot of changes on ground if we talk about ease of doing business. And Rahul has already mentioned certain aspects, whether we talk about GST, whether it's a faceless assessment. And one of the important aspects where Mr. Bhaskar, you also raised a topic on judiciary part. And you can see government is quite amenable in terms of bringing the kind of scheme to close these old cases, whether you talk about Vivad se Vishwas scheme. Definitely at one stroke you want to close a lot of old cases. So in terms of ease of doing business, we definitely see a very drastic change as compared to what used to be in the past. Saying that we still have a lot of scope of improvement. So yes, in certain areas we do see scope of improvement, but you see there are a lot of parameters in ease of doing business. And one of the important aspects that I also highlighted is your infrastructure part. Are we really there on the infrastructure part? Now, we talked about a lot of projects. I talk more from a perspective of chemical company. If I talk about, we talked about PCPIR, right? Except one, which has happened in Gujarat, Dahej. All 3 are still, at a very, very preliminary stage. Nothing has happened or moved in those directions. If I look at the dedicated freight corridor, it seems like it is on track so far. Let's see. If we talk about Sagarmala project, it's still delayed. So there are a lot of these things. I would say that government has taken an initiative, but we need to be little patient in terms of the implementation and to take the fruit of those implementation, what they are doing. So yes, there are steps being taken by the government. There are certain steps already implemented in making the life simple, but still we have a long way to go. Because what we need to understand that it's not that we are competing between old India and new India. We need to understand is that we are competing between India and other parts of the world who are also moving at a very, very fast pace. And that's very important to understand, because most of the time we just compare what was happening in India in the past and what is happening now in India. But to bring an investment, we need to be best in class.
Yeah.
That's the most important concept. And yes, there is still a way that we need to follow, and there is still a path that we need to cover.
Yeah.
Anyone?
I'm back, guys.
Wonderful, wonderful. Good. There are two more questions we've taken before we close. It's good to have you back.
Can I quickly give my input or my thought on ease of doing business? Yes, ease of doing business definitely improved. Ease of compliance, no. But for ease of doing business, you need compliance. Therefore, compliance will be there. And unfortunately, the moment I said it already earlier, the moment when we stop doing this hide and seek game, compliance will go down automatically. But
Rahul,
ease of doing business a lot.
Rahul, can I interrupt here 1 second? You see, compliance is a very funny thing in India. When the cost of complying is greater than the cost of non-compliance, you have a problem.
Which is in German you would say Milchrechnung. Milchmädchenrechnung. No, because undiscovered non-compliance is always more expensive.
Absolutely.
We have 18% of the interest rate and penalty plus penalty on non-payment of taxes. This is the highest in the world. So on the long run, non-compliance can never be cheaper. Never.
Yeah, I would say, Mr. Bhaskar, it's more about a culture part also, and we are in a transition phase. We need to understand that Rahul has rightly mentioned that now the government is saying that there is an applicable law and there is an applied law. And we need to follow that part. Whatever is the applicable law, we need to follow that. And this requires a culture change which can't be done overnight. We are seeing that we are moving in those directions, but I would say it will still take some time for people to really understand it does not make sense really to hide and do the business the way we used to do in the past.
Yeah.
Compliant way of doing the business is much, much cheaper, and I would say much more peaceful for you as well.
Okay. Dr. Morhard, the question was, has the ease of business improved in India? What are your views?
You know, if you, maybe I'm not the right person to have a long-term perspective, but, you know, I just had to drop out because the chief secretary of one of the states in my jurisdiction had said, why don't you come on a video conference for me and discuss a problem for a German company? What I find out, you know, is this openness, right? This openness for complaints and listening to companies. Sometimes it's not the company themselves, but if it could be in the German Chamber of Commerce, it could be VDMA, or it could be myself to reach out to highest level. But there is this openness to listen.
Brilliant.
Right? You're not running against the wall, right? It's not running against the wall. And they like to learn, they listen and want to ask. Of not, most of the problems, of course, are not easy, right? Because there are regulatory issues or change of laws in the course of time. But what I really appreciated, you know, that in all the states in Western, at least I can only talk for Western India. The doors are open. The doors are open. If you don't manage and you can always go on higher ranking. If this the MIDC, GIDC, and however they are called are not responding immediately and cannot do that. The doors are open, and this is something I really appreciate, and you don't find it so easily in other countries. So, of course, the question is always how the outcome you have been discussing, as Rahul is in there, you know, there. And in the very end, is the open door helps us also to understand why things are not working. right? That is also important, right? Because you get a feedback and you understand why things are not working, and then it's much better to deal with them, just to deal with a black box. And this creates, again, in a kind of faith and trust. If you feel, you know, it's understood, somebody listens, and then you try your very best. Sometimes you cannot do it, but this is a real openness here that we all in industries are appreciated. And my major job is to take care of all this kind of problems. Of course, it would be best there are no problems, but of course there are cultural misunderstandings sometimes, right? It's not in different interpretations and perspectives. So it's not only that the law or things are really made on purpose complicated. No. But as long as the doors are open, as we find here, I'm very confident and in the good way. And this openness has been improved because there is this sense, like the seminar I said, you know, the need and the call of the hour is to bring investment, right? And this helps to change the perspective and the sentiment of it. There's also more openness to understand now how important exports are, for example. I think we are on a good way with a lot of the local governments, at least, because that is what that is their opinion on so.
Yeah, I totally agree with this openness part and the support through the industry forum or through IGCC. We normally witness those things. So.
Excellent.
I totally agree.
Rajesh, would you like to say before I take one more question at the end?
Yeah, I could. I think even from my side, Bhaskar, I would like to reaffirm. Consul General has mentioned we are seeing from the German companies also who are present in India. I think the willingness of the government to talk if there are issues, and also I think GST was perhaps one of the biggest game changer. And at least it has given a very positive feedback to the international world that India can undergo changes because, as we know, Rahul can, I don't know exactly how long, but I think GST was in discussion for a good 10 to 12 years or 15 years. And actually, it has been implemented. Of course, there were a lot of improvements required, but at least we had the courage to implement it. And subsequently, with the passage of time, I think things have been clarified. And I think this sent out a very positive signal also to the German companies who found the whole tax structure in India very complex.
Cumbersome, yes.
Yeah, cumbersome and complex. So I think these are all the right moves from the government side. Of course, there's a lot to be done. Let's see now what the new labor codes, what they bring in. I hope they will also help and facilitate industry. So we have to wait and watch. I think government is working in the right direction. Maybe sometimes things take, because of our complex structure and being a democracy, I think things do take a little longer to be implemented. But we are quite hopeful things will improve in the future.
Rajesh, if I can quickly add one sentence. It's so sad. We always say, we are a democracy. Actually, Germany should be happy that we are a democracy and should appreciate that.
Great. Dipti, can you just question? We have overshot the time, but just one more question.
All right, one last question. So, are German companies having an ongoing arbitration proceeding against any Indian company? If yes, which arbitration centers do German companies prefer?
Rahul, that may be up your street.
Yes, obviously there will be arbitration proceedings between companies. We are having a couple of Germans tentatively always want to have a outside of India because they say it is a neutral ground. I would like to beg to differ. The Indian arbitration rules are extremely good. And if we talk about arbitration arbitrators, in any case, they are qualified lawyers. Yeah? And if I'm outside of India, if I want to have a judgment on an Indian contract, I will call an Indian arbitrator outside of India. Where is the benefit? Except that I'm spending in Singapore double the amount than what I would spend in India. Last point to that is I'm not so much in favor of that, because during the execution of the arbitration award, it is, from our experience, much faster if it is an Indian arbitration order than a foreign arbitration order.
Except Rahul, I'd like you to educate me here. If you take an arbitration award overseas, Indian courts can't open it. 2012 judgment of the Supreme Court. But if it's an arbitration award in India, the government can still reopen it. The Indian courts can reopen it, especially if the opposition is the government itself or a public sector unit.
Are you talking about arbitrations against India?
Against a company which is government owned.
Oh,
Government owned, yeah. That is,
yes.
But I think the question was more on two companies fighting in front of the arbitration.
Okay. Anyone else on arbitration? Okay. If there are no other comments, I'd like to end it here by saying that I've learned a great deal from all of you. And it was wonderful having all of you here. And it was almost like a bonanza having Dr. Morhard coming back to us. Thank you very much. And what we would like to do, if you are willing, if there's anything that you think that we should be highlighting, we have a policy cell, we look at policies, we bring out position papers, we even play the role of an advocacy with the government, telling why certain rules should be changed. As a media house, not business. So if there's any way you think that we can work together to promote India, promote business in India, please let us know. We'll be glad to work with you.
Sure.
And in the meantime, for the audience, by the way, we've got more than 1,000 people already concurrent, okay? If I thank to the audience, which has been patient with us, thank you everyone for being with us today.
Great.
Thank you. And thank you for the excellent moderation also, Bhaskar. Thank you.
My pleasure. I had wonderful people, so the moderation gets easy. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye, Dr. Morhard. Bye. Bye.
thank you so much, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you for having us.
Bye.